Some people say money can't buy happiness. Those people have never seen what $3 billion looks like in a bank account. But here's what they don't tell you about the ultra-rich. The ones who own islands, who have their coffee served on literal gold trays, who can buy anything in the world except the one thing they actually want. They're lonelier than you'd ever imagine. This is the story of Alexandra Winters. And no, that's not her real name. Because when you're born into the kind of family that has tea with presidents and owns half of Manhattan, your real name is a secret worth protecting. But we'll get to that. Let me take you back to where it all started. A Tuesday morning in September, New York City. The kind of fall day where the air is crisp and the city feels like it's showing off just for you. Alexandra stood in her corner office on the 47th floor of Winters Tower, looking down at people the size of ants rushing to their jobs. She was 28 years old, beautiful in that effortless way money can buy. Personal trainers, dermatologists, stylists who dressed her before she even woke up. She had everything, and she felt absolutely nothing. That's the thing about being born with a silver spoon in your mouth. Eventually, everything tastes like metal. Alexandra's assistant, Marie, knocked on the door. 3 soft taps. That's how you knock when your boss can fire you for breathing too loud. Miss Winters, your father wants to see you. He says it's urgent. Her father, Charles Winters, the man who built an empire from nothing and expected his daughter to treat it like her religion. She grabbed her phone and headed to the elevator. Top floor, executive suite, the place where decisions got made that changed thousands of lives before lunch. But she never made it there. The elevator lurched. Hard. Then dropped. Just 3 feet. But 3 feet in a metal box 47 floors up feels like falling off the edge of the world. The emergency lights kicked on. Red. Flashing. Her heart hammered against her ribs like it was trying to escape. And then she heard it. A voice through the emergency speaker. Hey, can you hear me? It wasn't security. Too young. Too warm. Yes, she managed. Her voice sounded small. She hated that. Okay, good. My name's James. I'm in the elevator next to yours. Maintenance guy. We're stuck together, looks like. A maintenance guy. Alexandra had worked in this building for 6 years and never once noticed the maintenance staff. They were invisible to people like her. Ghosts who fixed things while the important people slept. How long? She asked. Could be 20 minutes. Could be an hour. The fire department's on the way. But hey, at least you're not alone, right? Something about his voice made her chest feel less tight. What's your name? He asked. She hesitated. In her world, names meant something. Names meant articles in Forbes. Names meant people wanting things from you. Alex, she said. Just Alex. Nice to meet you, Alex. Even if the circumstances are a little weird. He laughed. It was such an ordinary laugh. Not the polished chuckle of men in boardrooms. Just real. They talked. For 47 minutes, they talked. He told her about growing up in Queens. About his mom who worked 3 jobs to keep them fed. About how he almost went to college but his dad got sick, so he took the first job he could find. She told him things she'd never told anyone. About how empty her apartment felt. About how she had dinner with her father once a month and they never talked about anything real. About how sometimes she looked at her life and wondered if she'd accidentally picked up someone else's. You know what's funny? James said, his voice soft through the speaker. You sound sad, and you're probably sitting in a designer dress that costs more than my yearly salary. Does that surprise you? Nah, money doesn't fix the hard stuff. It just makes it harder to complain about. When the elevator doors finally opened, Alexandra stepped out on shaky legs. And there he was, James, standing in the hallway in a maintenance uniform, holding a toolbox, looking at her with these eyes that were brown and kind and completely unimpressed by who she was supposed to be. He was handsome, not magazine handsome, real handsome, the kind that sneaks up on you. You okay? He asked. She nodded. Thanks for talking to me. Anytime you get stuck in an elevator, I'm your guy. He smiled. She smiled back, and something shifted in the universe. Just a little. Just enough. Alexandra couldn't stop thinking about him. Which was ridiculous. She had a board meeting in 3 hours. She had reports to review. She had a dinner with investors who could make or break the company's next quarter. But all she could think about was the way James said her name. Like it was just a name, not a brand. She did something she'd never done before. She looked him up in the employee directory. James Mitchell, building maintenance, 5 years with the company. Employee ID, 47829. A number. He was just a number in her father's empire. That night, she couldn't sleep. She sat on her balcony overlooking Central Park, drinking wine that cost more than James probably made in a week, and she felt like the worst kind of person. 3 days later, the elevator broke again. Except this time, she was pretty sure it wasn't an accident. "Hey, Alex," his voice through the speaker. "Fancy meeting you here." She laughed. Actually laughed. When was the last time she'd done that? "Did you break the elevator on purpose?" she asked. "Me? I'm just a simple maintenance guy. These old elevators, they're temperamental." "James." "Okay, maybe I delayed the repair by 10 minutes. Sue me." They talked until security figured out what was wrong. 23 minutes this time. He told her about the book he was reading. Some thriller about a heist gone wrong. She told him about the charity gala she had to attend that weekend, how she'd rather clean toilets than make small talk with people who measure their worth in zeros. "So don't go," he said, like it was simple. "I have to. It's expected." "Who expects it?" She didn't have an answer. When the doors opened, he was standing there again. This time, he had 2 cups of coffee from the break room. The cheap kind in styrofoam cups. "Figured you could use a real drink instead of whatever fancy thing you usually have," he said. It was the best coffee she'd ever tasted. They started meeting. Not officially. Not dates. Just moments. He'd text her when he was on her floor. She'd make excuses to walk past the maintenance office. They'd grab lunch from food trucks. $5 tacos that she enjoyed more than $100 steaks. He showed her parts of the city she'd never seen. Little parks in Queens. Diners in Brooklyn where the waitress called everyone Han, and the coffee never stopped coming. Record stores. Used bookshops that smelled like paper and time. She showed him her world too. The roof of Winters Tower at sunset. The private gallery where her family kept art worth millions. The silence of money. "You know what's crazy?" he said one night, sitting on a bench in Washington Square Park, watching street performers. "I feel like I know you better than people who've known you your whole life. That's because you're the only person who talks to me like I'm human." He looked at her then, really looked at her, and she felt seen for the first time in her life. "Alex, don't," she whispered. "Don't say what you're about to say. Because we both know this can't go anywhere." "Why not?" "Because I'm Charles Winters' daughter. Because you work for my family's company. Because people like me don't end up with people like you. That's just how the world works. Maybe the world's wrong." He kissed her then, soft and careful, and like she was something precious. And Alexandra Winters, who'd been kissed by sons of senators and heirs to fortunes, felt her heart break open for a maintenance worker from Queens. For 6 weeks, they lived in a bubble. Secret texts, stolen moments, a parallel universe where titles and money and last names didn't matter. But bubbles always pop. It was Marie who saw them first. Alexandra's assistant, walking past a coffee shop in Brooklyn, spotting her boss holding hands with a man in jeans and a t-shirt. Marie didn't say anything, but her eyes said everything. 2 days later, Alexandra was called into her father's office. Charles Winters sat behind a desk the size of a small car, looking at his daughter like she was a quarterly report that didn't add up. "Sit." She sat. "I'm going to ask you a question, and I want you to think very carefully before you answer. Are you involved with someone from the maintenance staff?" Her blood went cold. "Who told you that?" "Answer the question, Alexandra." She lifted her chin. "Yes." The silence was sharp enough to cut. "His name is James Mitchell," her father said, pulling out a folder. An actual folder with James' life inside it. 29 years old. High school diploma. No college degree. Makes $42,000 a year. Has $17,000 in credit card debt. And a mother in assisted living that he pays for out of pocket. Each fact landed like a slap. "Dad, do you have any idea how this looks? The Winters heiress dating the help? The tabloids would have a field day. Our investors would question your judgment. Our competitors would smell blood in the water. I don't care about any of that. Then you're more foolish than I thought. He leaned forward. This ends now. Today. You will not see him again. You will not contact him again. And if you care about his well-being at all, you'll make sure he understands that staying away from you is the best thing he could possibly do. Are you threatening him? I'm protecting my family. And whether you like it or not, that includes protecting you from yourself. She left his office shaking. That night, James knocked on her apartment door. She'd given him the address during one of their midnight phone calls, never imagining he'd actually use it. The doorman had let him up because she'd put his name on the list, because she'd actually imagined a future where this man could just show up at her door. How stupid she'd been. Alex, what's going on? You haven't answered my texts all day. She stood in the doorway, not letting him in. If he came inside, she'd break. This has to stop, she said. The words felt like choking. What? Us. Whatever this is. It has to stop. He looked at her like she'd stabbed him. Why? What happened? My father knows. And he's right. This was never going to work. We're from different worlds, James. I was kidding myself thinking we could. Kidding yourself? Alex, look at me. Look at me. She did. Those brown eyes that had seen her. Really seen her. I don't care about your money. I don't care about your last name. I care about the woman who ate gas station pizza with me and said it was the best meal she'd had in months. I care about the woman who cried when we watched the sun come up from the Brooklyn Bridge. I care about you. It's not enough, she whispered. In my world, caring isn't enough. There are rules, expectations, and I can't drag you into this. My father will destroy you. He'll make sure you never work anywhere in the city again. Let him. I've been poor before. I can be poor again. What I can't do is pretend I don't love you. Love. He'd said it. James, please don't make this harder than it already is. Then tell me you don't feel the same way. Look me in the eye and tell me the last 6 weeks meant nothing. Tell me you don't love me back. And I'll walk away right now. She opened her mouth. The words were right there. The smart words. The safe words. But they wouldn't come. Because she did love him. Desperately. Completely. In a way that terrified her. I can't do this, she finally said. I'm sorry. She closed the door. And on the other side, she heard him stand there for a long moment before his footsteps faded down the hall. Alexandra Winters slid down to the floor of her $10 million apartment and cried harder than she had since she was a little girl. 3 months passed. Alexandra threw herself into work. 18-hour days, 7 days a week. She became the daughter her father always wanted, ruthless, focused, empty. James quit, just stopped showing up one day. She heard through office gossip that he'd moved somewhere out of state. Good, she told herself. That's good. He's moving on. She tried to do the same. Went on dates with appropriate men. Sons of her father's colleagues. Men with the right education, the right portfolio, the right everything. They bored her to tears. Then came the letter. It arrived at her office on a Tuesday. Plain envelope, no return address. Inside, a single piece of paper with a phone number and a message written in careful handwriting. Call me if you want to know the truth about who you really are. E. She had no idea who E was, but something about that message made her hands shake. She called the number from her car, parked in an underground garage where no one could overhear. A woman answered, older by the sound of it, elegant accent. European, maybe. Miss Winters. Thank you for calling. My name is Eleanor Ashford. I was your mother's best friend before she died. Alexandra's mother had passed away when she was 3. She barely remembered her. Her father never talked about her. It was like she'd been erased from family history. What do you want? Alexandra asked. To tell you what your father has hidden from you your entire life. Can we meet? They met in a small cafe in the West Village. The kind of place where nobody cared who you were. Eleanor was 70, silver-haired, with the kind of elegance that comes from breeding, not money. She ordered tea and looked at Alexandra with sad, knowing eyes. You look just like her, Eleanor said softly. Your mother, Catherine. Tell me why I'm here. Eleanor pulled out a photograph. Faded old. A young woman in a wedding dress beautiful and radiant, standing next to a man who wasn't Charles Winters. Your mother, Eleanor said, was Catherine Elizabeth Ashford, daughter of the Duke of Ashford, ninth in line to the British throne. The cafe seemed to tilt. What? Your mother was royalty, Alexandra. And your father? Eleanor tapped the man in the photo. Your real father, Prince Henrik of Denmark. Your mother fell in love with him when she was 23. They married in secret, and then she got pregnant with you. That's impossible. Charles Winters is my father. I've seen my birth certificate. Charles Winters adopted you when you were 6 months old. After your real father died in a car accident, and your mother, heartbroken and ostracized by her family for marrying without permission, fled to America. She met Charles. He was ambitious, hungry for status. She was desperate for protection. They made a deal. This is insane. She died when you were 3. The official story was pneumonia. But there were questions. Questions Charles made sure never got answered. Eleanor's hands trembled as she poured more tea. Before she died, your mother gave me documents. Proof. Your real birth certificate. Marriage license. Letters. She made me promise to tell you the truth when you were old enough. She slid a manila envelope across the table. Why now? Alexandra whispered. Why tell me now? Because I'm dying. Cancer. I have maybe 3 months left, and I couldn't leave this world without keeping my promise to your mother. Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. You're not just wealthy, child. You're royalty. You have family in Europe who don't even know you exist. You have a heritage that was stolen from you. Alexandra opened the envelope with shaking hands. Inside, documents and official seals. Photographs of her mother with people she recognized from history books. A letter addressed to her in her mother's handwriting. My darling Alexandra, it began. If you're reading this, then I'm gone, and Eleanor has kept her promise. I'm so sorry I couldn't tell you myself. I'm sorry for so many things. Alexandra couldn't read the rest. The words blurred through her tears. She confronted her father that night, slammed the documents on his desk, demanded the truth. Charles Winters didn't even flinch. So you know, he said calmly. I wondered when this day would come. You lied to me. My entire life. You let me believe. I gave you a life. Your mother was broke, desperate, and alone. I gave both of you everything. I raised you as my own. I built an empire that will be yours someday. And this is the thanks I get. Did you kill her? The question hung in the air like poison. Get out of my office, he said quietly, dangerously. Did you kill my mother? Your mother died because she was weak, because she couldn't let go of a fantasy. She chose a dead prince over the life I was giving her. She made herself sick with grief. Don't you dare come in here and accuse me of... I want nothing to do with you, Alexandra said. Nothing. I'm leaving. I'm going to Europe to find my real family. And if you try to stop me, I'll tell every news outlet in the world what you've done. For the first time in her life, she saw fear in Charles Winters' eyes. Alexandra booked a flight to London that night. First class, using her own money, the trust fund from her mother's side she'd never touched. Money that was actually hers. She didn't tell anyone where she was going. Just disappeared. The heiress vanishing act. The tabloids had a field day. London was cold and gray and nothing like New York. She checked into a hotel under a fake name and spent 3 days researching. The Ashford family, old British nobility, Duke's estate in the countryside, a whole branch of relatives she'd never met. She hired a private investigator. Needed to know if they'd even want to meet her. Turns out, her grandmother, her mother's mother, was still alive, 92 years old, living in the family estate. The investigator made contact, showed the Duchess the documents, the photographs. Her grandmother wanted to meet her. The estate was 2 hours north of London. Rolling hills, gardens that looked like paintings, a house that had stood for 300 years. A butler answered the door. An actual butler. Miss Ashford, he said, using her real name, her mother's name. Her Grace is expecting you in the drawing room. The Duchess sat in a chair by the fireplace, wrapped in a shawl despite the summer warmth. She was tiny, fragile, with eyes that were sharp as glass. Come here, child. Let me look at you. Alexandra walked over, her heart hammering. The old woman reached up with a trembling hand and touched Alexandra's face. Tears spilled down her wrinkled cheeks. "Oh, Catherine, you came home." "I'm not Catherine," Alexandra whispered. "I'm her daughter, Alexandra. I know who you are, but you have her face, her eyes. Oh, my darling girl. I thought I'd never see those eyes again." The Duchess pulled her into a hug, and Alexandra, who'd spent 28 years thinking she was alone in the world, sobbed into this stranger's shoulder. Her grandmother told her everything. About her mother's wild love affair with Prince Henrik, about the scandal that rocked 2 royal families, about how Catherine had been disowned, cut off, erased from the family tree. "I should have fought for her," the Duchess said, her voice breaking. "I should have stood up to the family, to tradition, to all of it. But I was weak, and I lost my daughter because of it. I won't lose you too." Alexandra stayed in England for a month, met cousins, aunts, uncles who looked like her, who welcomed her with open arms, who treated her like family, not an heiress. She learned about her real father. Henrik had been kind, idealistic, passionate about environmental causes. He died in a car accident 2 months before she was born. Some people whispered it wasn't really an accident, that powerful people wanted him silenced. Alexandra didn't know what to believe anymore. But for the first time in her life, she felt like she belonged somewhere. One night, sitting in the garden under the stars, her cousin Marcus asked, "So what now? You going back to New York?" She didn't know. "There's nothing for me there." "Bit dramatic, isn't it? You're one of the richest women in America. Money isn't everything," says the woman who's never been without it. She laughed. "Fair point. What about love?" Marcus asked. "Anyone special back home?" And just like that, she thought of James. James, who she'd thrown away because she was scared, because she'd let her father control her, because she believed the lie that people like them didn't get happy endings. "There was someone," she said quietly, "but I ruined it." "Then fix it." "I don't think I can." "Why not? You're royalty now. You can do whatever you want." Could she? For the first time in months, Alexandra felt something like hope. Alexandra flew back to New York on a rainy October afternoon. She'd made up her mind. First stop, Winters Tower. She walked into her father's office without knocking. Charles looked up, surprised. He'd aged in the last month. Or maybe she just never noticed before. "I'm done," she said simply. "I'm stepping down from the company. I'm signing over my shares to charity. You can keep your empire. I want nothing to do with it." "Alexandra, I'm not Alexandra. I'm Catherine. Catherine Ashford. And I'm done pretending to be your daughter." She walked out before he could respond. Second stop, harder. She tracked James down. He'd moved to Philadelphia, working construction. The investigator had found his address in 2 hours. She stood outside his apartment building, hands shaking. It was nothing like her world. Brick building, fire escapes, kids playing basketball on the street. She almost turned around, almost got back in the car and ran away again. But she'd spent her whole life running. From her truth, from her feelings, from herself. Not anymore. She knocked on apartment 3B. James opened the door. He looked tired, thinner. There were shadows under his eyes that hadn't been there before. "Alex!" He sounded like he'd seen a ghost. "Hi!" They stared at each other. "What are you doing here?" he finally asked. "I found out who I really am. Turns out I'm not who I thought I was. My whole life was a lie. My father isn't my father. My mother was royalty. I have a family in England. I just walked away from a billion-dollar company. And I realized that none of it matters if I don't have you." She was talking too fast. Her heart was racing. I was wrong. About everything. I let fear control me. I let other people tell me who I was supposed to be, who I was supposed to love. And I lost the only real thing I've ever had. James leaned against the doorframe. "You broke my heart. I know. You made me feel like I wasn't good enough. Like what we had wasn't real. It was real. It's the most real thing I've ever felt. Then why'd you throw it away?" "Because I was scared," she whispered. "I was scared that loving you meant giving up everything I knew. But it turns out everything I knew was a prison. And you were the only person who ever saw me as something other than a last name and a bank account. Tears were streaming down her face now. I love you, James. I'm in love with you. And I know I don't deserve another chance. I know I hurt you. But I'm here and I'm asking. I'm begging. Please tell me it's not too late. James was quiet for a long moment. Then he stepped aside. Come in. She walked into his small apartment. It was basically one room. Tiny kitchen. A couch that probably folded out into a bed. But it was warm. There were books everywhere. Plants on the windowsill. It felt like a home. More like a home than her penthouse ever had. I tried to hate you, James said quietly. I really did. I told myself you were just another rich girl playing with people's lives. That I was an idiot for thinking we could be something. I don't blame you. But I couldn't hate you. I just missed you. Every single day. He turned to face her. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to sit down and tell me everything. The truth. All of it. Who you really are. What happened. Why you're really here. And then I'll decide if I can trust you again. She nodded. Okay. They talked for hours. She told him everything. About Eleanor and the photographs. About her real parents, the Duchess's daughter and the Danish prince. About confronting Charles. About England and meeting her grandmother and cousins. About walking away from the company. So you're actually royalty, James said, a slight smile tugging at his lips. Technically, yes. 9th in line to the British throne. But that's like being the 9th person in line at a deli. Nobody really cares. He laughed. God, she'd missed that laugh. And you just gave it all up? The company, the money, not all of it. I still have my mother's trust fund, which is more money than any normal person needs. But yeah, I walked away from the Winters empire. Turns out I don't want to be a Winters. What do you want to be? She looked at him. Really looked at him. Happy. I want to be happy. And I haven't been happy since the day I closed that door on you. James sat down next to her on the couch. Close enough that she could smell his cologne. The same cheap stuff he'd always worn. It smelled like home. You hurt me, Alex. Catherine. Whatever your name is. Catherine Alexandra Ashford. But you can call me Alex. That's who I was when I was with you. The real me. You hurt me, he repeated. And I need to know this isn't just some rich girl crisis. That you're not going to wake up in 6 months and realize you miss your old life. I won't. How do you know? Because I spent 6 weeks with you eating food truck tacos and walking through Brooklyn, and those were the happiest 6 weeks of my entire life. Because when I was in England, surrounded by castles and titles and people calling me miss, all I could think about was you. Because money never made me feel the way you make me feel. She took his hand. He didn't pull away. I'm not asking you to forgive me right now. I'm just asking for a chance. Let me prove that I'm serious. Let me show you that I'm not that scared girl anymore. James was quiet for a long moment. She could see him thinking, weighing, deciding. I have conditions, he finally said. Anything. 1, no more lies. Ever. I don't care how ugly the truth is. You tell me everything. I promise. 2, we do this slow. We start over. Like we're meeting for the first time. I need to learn to trust you again. Okay. 3, you figure out who you are without all the money and the titles. Because I need to know you can be happy with a simple life. With me. In a place like this. He gestured around the small apartment. She looked around. At the mismatched furniture. The cracked ceiling. The radiator that was probably too loud in winter. I can work with this, she said softly. I can work with anything as long as you're in it. James smiled then. A real smile. The one she'd fallen in love with. You know it's crazy. Part of me wants to be angry at you. Part of me wants to protect myself and send you away. And the other part has been in love with you since that first elevator ride. And that part is really glad you're here. He kissed her then. Soft at first. Tentative, like he was remembering how. Then deeper, like he was making up for lost time. When they finally pulled apart, Alexandra was crying again. Happy tears this time. So what happens now? She asked. Now, we order pizza, the cheap kind, and we watch a movie on my laptop because I don't have a TV. And we just exist together. No pressure, no expectations. Just us. That sounds perfect. And it was. Over the next few months, they rebuilt what they'd lost. She got a small apartment in Philly. Nothing fancy. 2 bedrooms in a neighborhood where people actually talked to their neighbors. She started volunteering at a literacy center, teaching adults to read. Used her mother's trust fund to start a scholarship program for kids from low-income families. James introduced her to his mom. Frances Mitchell was a tiny woman with James's kind eyes and a handshake that could break bones. She looked Alexandra up and down and said, "So you're the girl who broke my son's heart." "Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry. Don't apologize to me. Apologize to him every day by being better." "I'm trying." Frances had smiled then. "Good. Now come here and help me with these potatoes." It was the first time Alexandra had ever peeled a potato. She cut herself twice. Frances laughed and showed her the right way to hold the peeler. Christmas came. They spent it with James's family in Queens. 14 people in a tiny apartment, talking over each other, laughing, arguing about football, passing plates of food that came from the heart instead of a catering company. Alexandra sat at a card table pushed against the wall because there wasn't enough room at the main table, eating mac and cheese from a paper plate, and she'd never been happier. "You okay?" James whispered, squeezing her hand under the table. "I'm home," she whispered back. Her grandmother came to visit in the spring. The Duchess of Ashford, tiny and elegant, stepping out of a car in Philadelphia like she did this every day. She met James over tea in Alexandra's simple apartment. "So you're the young man who captured my granddaughter's heart," the Duchess said, looking him up and down. "Yes, ma'am. Though technically she captured mine first." "And what do you do, Mr. Mitchell?" "I'm in construction. Residential buildings. Nothing fancy. Honest work. It pays the bills." The Duchess was quiet for a moment. Then she smiled. "My daughter, Alexandra's mother, fell in love with a prince, and it destroyed her. She spent her whole life trying to fit into a world that wasn't built for love. It was built for duty and appearances and maintaining bloodlines." She reached across and took James's hand. "You make my granddaughter happy. You see her for who she is, not what she represents. That's rarer than any title. Don't let anyone tell you you're not good enough for her. The question is whether she's good enough for you." James looked at Alexandra. "She's getting there." Alexandra laughed, tears in her eyes. A year later, James proposed. Not with a ring from Tiffany's, with his grandmother's ring. A simple gold band with a tiny diamond that had been passed down through 3 generations of Mitchell women who'd worked hard and loved harder. He proposed in Washington Square Park, on the same bench where they'd had their first kiss. "I don't have much to offer you," he said, down on one knee while street musicians played in the background. "I can't give you mansions or private jets or any of the stuff you grew up with. But I can promise you this. Every single day for the rest of my life, I will see you. The real you. And I will love you exactly as you are." She said yes before he even finished asking. They got married in England. Small ceremony at her grandmother's estate. Just family and close friends. Alexandra wore her mother's wedding dress, carefully preserved in a trunk for 30 years. James wore a suit from Men's Warehouse and looked more handsome than any prince. The Duchess cried through the whole ceremony. "Happy tears," she said. Finally, happy tears. Charles Winters was not invited. He tried to reach out a few times. Apologetic emails. Requests to meet. But Alexandra had made her choice. Some bridges, once burned, can't be rebuilt. And she was okay with that. She had a real family now. The Mitchells, who'd welcomed her with open arms. The Ashfords, who'd given her back her history. And James, who'd given her a future. They bought a small house in Pennsylvania. Nothing fancy. 3 bedrooms, a backyard for the dog they planned to adopt, a kitchen where they could cook together. James went back to school, studying architecture. Alexandra expanded her scholarship program nationwide. They lived simply, happily, without the weight of expectations or the prison of wealth. Sometimes, late at night, Alexandra would think about her old life. The penthouse, the power, the world where her last name opened every door. And she didn't miss it, not even a little, because she'd learned something that money could never buy. Who you are matters more than what you have. And the right person will love you not because of what you can give them, but because of who you become when you're with them. James would find her on those nights, lost in thought, and he'd pull her close. "Where'd you go?" he'd ask. "Just thinking about how different my life is now. Better or worse?" She'd kiss him. "So much better. Better than I ever imagined." The truth is, fairy tales are complicated. They don't always go the way you expect. Sometimes the princess has to save herself. Sometimes the prince is just a regular guy who sees you for who you really are. Sometimes you have to lose everything to find what actually matters. But the happy endings, those are real. They're just quieter than you'd expect. Less about grand gestures and more about choosing someone every single day. About building a life together from scratch. About loving someone not because they're perfect, but because they're real. Alexandra Winters, Catherine Ashford, whoever she was supposed to be, had finally found where she belonged. Not in a palace, not in a penthouse, but in a simple house with a man who loved her, a dog that barked too much, and a future that was entirely her own. And that, more than any fortune or title, was worth everything.